So what was really interesting to hear, it really was a pleasant surprise at the end of August when you announced, I think it was at headquarters, that you had spoken to Christy and that we have a public hearing. We're on the verge of having that hearing.
Right.
I mean, we're a couple days away from that now.
We were excited that we got the offer. We didn't think that it would ever happen because we're used to not being listened to. When Steve Christie told us about this, that we were going to have an opportunity to get on the agenda to have a hearing at the Board of Health, we started thinking immediately about how to use that, because we've all seen ways that people have been harmed by both the COVID shots, the mandates. There are a lot of ways that the community has suffered because of the decisions that have been made by the Board of Supervisors and other bodies like the City Council, right? And they're informed by the Board of Health. So there would be really good reasons that we would have to speak to the Board of Health. There was apparently some discussion between Steve Christie and Sharon Bronson, who's the chairwoman of the Board of Supervisors. And they decided for whatever reason that it was something they wanted to help to facilitate. And they wanted to help us get onto the agenda at a Board of Health meeting so that we would be able to have a hearing.
Since I've been participating and speaking before the Board of Supervisor meetings, I quickly recognized that a call to the public was not very effective because they don't have to answer us back. They can just listen and then say next. It's a way of sort of appeasing the desire of the public without holding them accountable. And I did recognize that they had on their agenda times for hearings. And in a hearing specifically, they were answering back and forth. There could be some question and answer. The way to get through to these people would be in a hearing type of situation.
So her response to me when I asked her, and I believe this was the second time she had been asked, Dan, you had asked first, right? When I asked her if we could get a hearing, she said, no way. Forget about it. It's not going to happen. And she was very, very stern about that and uncompromising. So I thought that we didn't have a chance. And when we learned later that we might have a chance, I was very surprised because I thought that she would absolutely not back us in any way to get this.
Well, it's a similar response I got earlier when I asked her, could we get a hearing? She said, no, you're not going to get it. So I continued kind of a friendly posture. And finally, she came back and said, well, if you had a supervisor ask for a hearing, then you would get it. I said, oh, okay. And that's when Christy involved. And then I think he was the one suggesting that we go to the Board of Health.
Yeah, because originally we were looking at the Board of Supervisors meeting, and he's the one who actually suggested Board of Health.
That was on our Zoom meeting with his assistant, Beth, and she was the one when she was bringing up 10 to 15 minutes, let's start with the Board of Health. So it was suggested not to go to the Board of Supervisors at the beginning. Let's take it to the Board of Health.
Steve could ask to put an item on the agenda, but ultimately the chair has the prerogative to whether or not any of those things are going to be heard. So if the chair doesn't want to have anything to be heard, oh well. And also, so did you mention that we went and spoke with Rex Scott? We asked him, could you help us to get an agenda item? And he just sort of brushed it off like, well, good luck with that. And I'm like, well, we're asking for, how can I help you? Well, we're asking you, can you help us to get this as an item on the agenda?
It is so similar to everything that we're seeing, no matter what level of government across the United States right now. Local, federal, the way to handle people like us is to ignore us.
Why did you want a hearing in the beginning?
Because then we could present evidence. If they're only hearing what the Board of Health or the Department of Health is telling them according to the CDC, and they're making their decisions strictly on that evidence, what other counterintelligence could be presented? And so we recognize either way we would be going into a hostile audience, someone who would be in the position of not believing us, but we had to try something.
Early in July, we had the VAL meeting, the leadership meeting, and we talked about showing that video. And so that was the kind of, everybody was like, yes. And so that was the kind of the catalyst, and it's changed a little bit, and that's really good. And so it's kind of, so Christie was on board with that. He even saw the video, Children Health Defense, and he said, yes, let's do it. Let me talk to my staff, et cetera. And so it's kind of taken its own life and moved, which is fantastic. And Steve's the one that suggested going to the Board of Health, which is brilliant, I thought.
We wanted to provide a counter narrative, like Drew mentioned, so that they were not getting one-sided information, and we were considered that they were also getting false information. A lot of false information is being shared about safety and efficacy of the shots, what will happen when people receive them, about what will happen when people don't receive them. And I think that we all know people in our personal lives who have been adversely affected by this. I personally have a friend who died last year. I have another family member who is close to death, potentially. I think it's the same thing. There's no one out there telling people and warning them that there are risks associated with these shots. To the contrary, they're telling them that if they get these shots, even contrary to what the CDC, for example, explicitly states, that they will not spread COVID to other people, that they will not get sick or not get as sick. So there's no downside to it. It's a very difficult situation because there's a lot of lying and manipulation involved in getting people to take this shot. And I think it benefits the people who are producing it and selling it. That is one of the most important parts of that story. It's not for us, it's for them.
And this is just cutting to news hot off the press from the other day. People might have heard that Pfizer is now taking the shots to the market. The price that it costs to make one of those shots is $1.15, something like that. Now they're taking it to the health insurance companies, 130. So it's an amazing markup. And so Pfizer, this particular company, is in it for the money. They care not about the health of the people. And this is clearly proving it.
We originally had it presented to us, the possibility of getting onto the agenda for the Board of Health. We were excited about that. We started working on it. We put a lot of man hours into preparing that. All of us doing research, making contacts, checking our information, making sure that it was correct. And as we got closer to the end of September, which was the first date that we were supposed to have this hearing, we weren't getting any feedback. We weren't hearing that we had actually made it onto the agenda. So we reached out and asked about it, and it was confirmed that we had not been placed on the agenda. We spoke with the appropriate people. They said they would try to get us on the addendum for the meeting. We thought, okay, well, that's probably going to happen. This was an oversight. A couple of days later, we learned we hadn't been added to the addendum either. Then we were promised that we would be put on the agenda of the following meeting instead at the end of October. We continued to work on this. Some more time went by, and we did attend the September meeting, even though we didn't have a hearing. So several of us were present at the Board of Health, and we chose to speak during the call to the public. They allow 21 minutes of talk at that time. There were 7 people with 3 minutes apiece, and it was interesting because they had really bad audiovisual disruptions during that meeting. Some of those made it difficult for us to do our call to the public, but we persevered. Ann Rose was the spearhead there. Yeah. She put up with a lot of feedback and a lot of noise. They eventually got it taken care of a little bit more. We did as much as we could do. And so then we started working on our October date. After a while, a few weeks went by, we emailed to ask if we were on the agenda for the October meeting. Didn't hear back for a couple of days. Someone reached out to us and said, sorry, you're not going to be on the agenda for this meeting either. We learned that it was going to be virtual for the first time in several months because of the audiovisual problems from the last meeting, at least allegedly. We were shut out in every way possible and decided to make the best of that and do another call to the public over the phone, which is where we're at right now. And we're planning to coordinate together and try to deliver as much information as can since we're not getting a hearing. And I think it's pretty clear at this point that they do not want us to have a hearing. What we know at this point is that they're going to continue with virtual meetings until January, at which point they will have a new meeting space. We'll see what happens then.
When we were preparing for our hearing the first time, there was a lot of push for us to turn in our material. Turn in your slides. What are you going to do? Those kind of things. And honestly, it was almost near the very last minute. We really wanted it to be in really good order before we turned it over. We understand that Chairwoman Bronson and Supervisor Christie were working together to get us on the board, and we were supposed to basically turn in a draft or our slides and those kind of things before the meeting. I thought, you know what? We're not going to turn in our stuff until we're actually on the agenda. And then all of a sudden, then we come to find out, we're not even on the agenda. So I felt good in hindsight that we didn't show our cards. We realized at some point we're going to have to be transparent about what it is we're going to speak about. There is a bit of a predatory feeling. I think that they're mining us for information without disclosing anything on their part. I think for me personally, the jury's out as to whether or not either one of them are working for us or if they were just trying to get information out of us.
I'm scared to death for my grandchildren, and I can't talk to my daughter about it. She won't let me, and I just feel like if I can't do it there, I want to be able to have a voice and at least help someone else here. And I think it's important to get that information out because there's so much disinformation on mainstream media. Even at work, I constantly hear, oh, come get your flu and COVID shots every 5 minutes. It's just permeated everything, and it's frightening. I think what bothers me the most is the kids, how they just shoved through the shots on the childhood vaccination schedule, which gives them blanket immunity forever.
I am grateful that I have had this kind of support, and that's our purpose here, is to make people aware that you're being scammed in a way into thinking you're safe. Ultimately, though, when you're forcing people because they haven't taken a shot and they can't go to work or they're losing their jobs and they can't support their families, this is pretty critical. So I want to stop living in fear and just standing up for the basic human rights that we have.
So my point of contact, Suzanne, the administrative assistant to the health department medical director, she shared with me that she had no idea specifically, do we have 15 minutes with a Q&A or without a Q&A, just kind of getting some specifics down so we could prepare. And she said, what public hearing? She shared with me that she's out of the communication loop when it comes to setting the agenda. This whole conversation is going on with the board members. One of the things that really is clear about the Board of Health is that it is political. Capital P. She has to walk a really fine line with what she says to me. It is very, very carefully constructed. I really sense fear a lot from the Board of Health, the individual members, and then collectively as a body. They're very, very good at just being silent under the guise of no interruptions. There's a lot of stuff that we probably will never be privy to.
The Board of Health is the driving force to the supervisors. And that is the foundation where they're saying, yes, we're going to follow the Board of Health and away we go. And that's how all that stuff gets out. That's why I really liked it when we started going after the Board of Health, because that is the foundation that we need to affect. But they're blocking that too.
We're still at this point shut out from the agenda. What we will be doing this Wednesday is not a hearing. It is the call to the public. It's just about holding people accountable. In my mind, it's speaking truth to power. It is removing plausible deniability with compassion to the degree that we're hoping that their hearts and minds will change. We're just going to go on until we can't press forward anymore. Who does put that agenda together? If we believe Suzanne and that she had no knowledge of us either time being on the agenda, then Dr. Horowitz is not sharing that information with the clerk whose responsibility it is to post it for the public. Do we know that Dr. Horowitz knows that information and is just holding it back? Or has this been a play the entire time between Supervisor Christie and Chairman Bronson to get information from us?
What I can say is that she met with Dr. Horowitz last week to set the agenda. And as we all know, it was not posted by the end of the day. Why wasn't it there? Not only for us, but for anyone who would be looking for that agenda. Early in the spring, when I was new to these 3 minutes every month. I really wanted more time. So I reached out to Suzanne. Let me just have lunch with Dr. Horowitz. Can you get that set up? Oh, nobody's ever done that. It was crickets after that. So I was ecstatic to hear about a public hearing that we still don't have. It sure does seem like there are actions thwarting our ability to present this information that would be open to the public. Bit of power mongering. That is what I think upsets me about politics. People just want more and more and more when they're in these positions of power. The ability to dictate and be the authority to the rest of us. They're allowing the children to get injected. They don't know the dangers of these COVID shots. It's an amazing thing to observe. If it was a movie, it would be science fiction.